Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Called Shots Cast Under Review. I'm Jason, and this time we're taking a look at Paizo's Pathfinder Player Core, their player-facing remaster rulebook. Before we go any further, I do need to point out that Paizo has provided us with this product in exchange for review and content purposes. So let's get into it. The new Player Core comes in at 464 pages, nearly 200 fewer than the original Pathfinder 2nd Edition Core rulebook, and that's due to a lot of restructuring in the format and presentation. There's a future Player Core 2 due out in 2024 that will have another grouping of classes, including the ones from the original Core rulebook that aren't present in Player Core. Released beside Player Core is GM Core, which has taken many of the GM-facing rules from various sources and compiled them into a single volume, but that's talk for another time. Despite much of the chatter online, the remaster rules are not a new edition of the game. This has been referred to as a major errata, with many of the changes amounting to renaming things to avoid future potential legal issues, and in the process making some much sought after updates and upgrades to various portions of the game. The framework and foundation of 2nd edition is still there, with some slight remodeling. I like to think of it as like a new game plus. You're still playing the same game, but there's new features to make it easier and more fun. While there are a number of parts in here we'd like to take a deep dive into, this is going to be more of a general pass on the new book, and some of the standout parts that jumped out to us. In terms of the book itself, 200 pages will certainly make for a thinner and lighter tome, and the new cover art by Wayne Reynolds is amazing as always. Inside, the book really gets a chance to shine. I remember the styling of the core rulebook being hyped when it was released, but the page and border colors of Player Core just seem to be more visually pleasing and easier on the eyes. There's a mix of old and new art within that to me most stands out in the equipment chapter for all the new visuals of the weapons, and, conversely, in the Galarian and Inner Sea section, where it is heavily altered, cutting roughly 10 pages down to 3 with removal of the half-page art splashes and limiting the info for the areas. However, the areas do now provide thematic tags to help define the locales, and example character info for each zone. There's also a What Does My Character Know section to establish the baseline assumption of knowledge for the average Galarian resident. One of the first places I looked was the example of play breakdown to see how, if at all, some of the rules additions and alterations were portrayed. Being the rulebook, I think the example should be something gone through with a number of passes, especially since one of the aims was to make the game easier to learn and play. Despite that, there are some rules contradictions, such as pointing out that a roll to search for traps was secret, so the GM would roll, but telling the player to roll stealth for sneaking, which is also a secret roll that should have been handled by the GM. Another one that garnered some online conversations was having the rogue add dex to damage for throwing a weapon, when the rule suggests that a thrown weapon becomes a ranged weapon, therefore no longer qualifying for the dex to damage. The example of play also makes use of the updated and clarified recall knowledge rules relating to creature identification and, well, knowledge. I'll say right off the bat that I'm not a fan of the new structure behind recall knowledge, but that's easily something that can have its own discussion. Suffice to say, recall knowledge is now done, officially, by asking pointed questions about creatures instead of the GM sharing what knowledge you recall. Moving on to the more meaty subjects, we've got new core ancestries. Leshy and Orc have been added to the roster, as well as a number of versatile heritage, including the Changeling, Nephilim, which is a type of planar scion associated with celestial and fiendish beings, and the mixed ancestries, where you get things like the Half-Orc, Dromar, and the Half-Elf, Ayuvaran. There are some new and updated ancestry feats as well. There are 8 classes in Player Core as opposed to the 12 in the core rulebook. Removed from the original CRB list and slated for Player Core 2 are Alchemist, Barbarian, Champion, Monk, and Sorcerer. Added to the mix is the Witch, which has undergone some major upgrades. Removed from the game is the alignment system, replaced with what looks to be a more robust, customizable version of the Edicts and Anathema system already built into the game. Along with that comes sanctification rules, which are for clerics and devoted followers of deities, granting sanctified characters with the holy or unholy trait, which will later affect battles against other sanctified creatures. There's also some new actions available, as well as functions within actions. Sustain has become an action now. There's also a new reposition action under athletics to move someone in ways other than shoving or dragging. Disarm has also been updated to be much better functionally on a success. And a big one I know my players are going to love is the new swap function, which lets you spend a single action to put away one item and draw another. There's also rules for throwing items to your teammates. Lastly, we come to a chart clarification that has set some tables alight. Of course, I'm talking about the dying condition when paired with the wounded condition. While it seems Paizo staff has said the rules were always meant to be the way they're now displayed, online chat makes it seem the vast majority of tables have been running it incorrectly since the game released, and Pathfinder is way more deadly than many people believed, and a lot of people already thought it was a pretty deadly game, especially the players at my table. I've already been a part of one game where the GM said they were sticking with the old understanding we'd all shared, where wounded value is only counted when gaining the dying condition. Overall, while there's clearly some things about the Remaster and Player Core that I'm not completely happy with, or the alternate rules for rolling attributes, I think the book is generally a successful upgrade that will further set Paizo and Pathfinder apart and make them their own thing. It's just too bad we're still stuck with fancy and casting, but that would truly require a new edition of Pathfinder, which the Remaster is not. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks again to Paizo for providing us with this book. Keep an eye out for more Remaster reviews and chats, and until next time, I'm Jason. Peace out.